Folks, I am super excited to have as my inaugural guest for the new podcast, As the World Churns, Mary Trump, New York Times bestselling author, the CEO and founder of Mary Trump Media, the just my friend, the incomparable, the brilliant Mary Trump, who provides so much insight and analysis to all of us to help us not lose our minds on a regular basis. I know that you don't think that you do that because you're like, aren't we losing our minds on a regular basis? But Mary, so here we are. We've passed the threshold of the 100 days of Donald Trump's second regime. You and I and our friends collectively told the world, do not give this man another pass at power. Do not give him back the keys because the second time gonna be worse than the first time. But people don't like to listen to smart women and people of
No,
color and black
no.
folks and queer folks. So here we are. I want to just take your pulse on how do you even sum up for yourself where we are 3 months plus in to this second regime?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm so happy about your new show. Congratulations. It is well deserved, and I wish you all the success. Uh, you are one of the essential voices, so I'm happy to be here, but also, as you know, thrilled to have you part of Maritime Media
Yes.
and a lifelong Nerd Avenger. And I do think that to a person, we have been on the right side of this. I think all of us, to one degree or another, years and years ago, were saying things like, if Donald Trump gets back into office, it will be the end of the American experiment. So, how am I feeling about where we are slightly more than 100 days into the second Trump regime? I'm feeling that things are unfolding exactly as we anticipated and knew they would. Can we say that perhaps some things happened at an accelerated pace? Sure, because I think the big question mark for a while has been: are there guardrails? Will they hold? What kind of pushback will there be? To what extent can the judiciary slow things down, et cetera? Like there were just some things we couldn't know until they were happening. And I'm not going to pretend that I haven't been shocked by some of it. But again, not because it wasn't anticipated, but because there's something very different about watching things unravel in real time
Yeah.
versus anticipating that they're going to. And even though we knew what Donald Trump and his enablers were going to do to our agencies, to the rule of law, et cetera, it's very different to watch the Department of Justice, for example, be completely dismantled and turned into Donald Trump's personal law firm that is not there anymore to uphold and protect civil rights for all Americans, that is not there to uphold and protect the rule of law. It's there simply to do his bidding. That's a different feeling from knowing in the not too distant future it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that for me to intellectualize what we thought would happen and it actually happened, but to now feel it, like this is the thing that I keep, talking about, particularly on my Substack, is like the feeling around this.
Yeah.
The way that my body feels, how exhausted I am, how like I vacillate into these spaces of depression and darkness, and like that I could not plan for and anticipate, right?
Yeah.
And so it's seeing these things, and I think that we are, people like, no, well, we need to fight and we need to resist, and yes, but we also need to feel what is happening. And so when I see, for instance, the Pope just passed, right? I'm not a Catholic. I don't need to be Catholic to like be mourning, right? With millions of tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people who lost their leader, right? Um and be know enough to know that this is a mournful period of time for so many. For Donald Trump, it was an opportunity to play dress up with AI and posts out an image before conclave even begins in this time of mourning for millions and millions of people around the world. Like, what does that say about the psyche of this individual? And also, the White House account reposts it.
Yeah. It is shocking in the sense that it hasn't gotten more pushback. But I think one of the problems we've been dealing with for a long time, Danielle, is that according to corporate media, every awful thing about Donald Trump is just already baked in and we don't need to pay attention to it. However, the depredations get worse and different, like qualitatively different. So we're not dealing with the same negative things about him. He's pushing the envelope. He's doing much worse things. And still nothing's getting enough attention because on the one hand, as you say, it's offensive. It's deeply offensive what he's done. It's deeply disturbing how many people there are who do not have the issues he has, which I'll get to in a second, willing to amplify his insanity.
Mm-hmm.
But also troubling to me is that, I mean, it would be bad enough if it were a joke, right? If he were just playing dress up, AI cosplay, and saying, "Hey, how cool do I look as a pope?" Um, but what's worse to me is that on some level, he actually means it. I'm
Yes.
not saying that he thinks that he can be pope, although who knows? I'm saying that he thinks he should be. Donald Trump thinks that he's better than everybody else, that he can do every job better than everybody else. And that's because he's never had to do anything in his life. He's never had to prove anything. He's been enabled all along. He's failed upward so spectacularly. And it's just nobody notices anymore how deeply, profoundly disturbing and disturbed this kind of behavior is. So what does it say about his supporters? What does it say about a media that continues to fail us on a daily basis?
I mean, it continues to say that clicks are more important than our country, right? That using Donald Trump for the last 10 years as clickbait, as a way to sell your network, sell whatever, sell your ads, um, increase the profit share for your shareholders was more important than journalism. The only industry that is named in our Constitution is the press, right? Because the founding fathers knew how important the press was to the foundation of democracy, right? If the people don't have the truth shared with them, if politicians are not to be held accountable by the people, then what separates them from the monarchy that they fled?
Right. Yeah, and what's equally horrifying is that the very institution whose job it is essentially to defend our democracy and make sure that it's strong and viable cannot exist without a strong democracy. And yet they are unwilling to take the threats seriously. And I know that there's a tricky line to walk. On the one hand, Donald Trump, sadly, tragically, is president of the United States of America. He can't be ignored. That is just not possible. But what I've been wondering about for a long time is why is the assessment always made that you'll get more clicks if you repost his stuff without any critical commentary? Like, why wouldn't posting that picture and saying, "This is insanity. This person is so deeply unwell and must be removed," like, that's not gonna get clicks too? But it never happens. It's just, "Oh, this is something Donald did." Okay. I that's the part I don't get. Like, I would think that pushback would be
Mhm, mhm.
just as interesting to the American people, or I should say analysis that takes into account the truth of what's going on and doesn't pretend that just because he's president that anything he does is normal, which is where we seem to be right now, and I don't get it. I do not get it. I would think that hard-hitting critiques of his behavior and the impact his egregious policies are having on the American people would also get noticed, but apparently I don't understand anything about corporate media.
Apparently we don't, which is why we're independent. But but the last question that I have for you, is it's a big one, which is I can't see 6 months from now. I cannot wrap my mind where we will be 6 months from now. And so I'm curious as to how quickly we have watched our country crumble, and we're literally just walking amongst the rubble of America, of our democracy that continues to just fall around us. Where do you see where in 6 months from now?
Well, I'm with you. One of the hardest things, just on a human level, I think we've all had to deal with, is that inability to see beyond. I felt this way very strongly in September and October of 2020. The outcomes of that election were so diametrically opposite. Like, it's one way if Biden gets in, it's another way if Donald gets back in. They're so different. I cannot I literally could not see beyond election day. It was like a black wall, and it's very difficult to exist as a human when you can't think beyond. You can't think into the future.
Mhm.
It was very paralyzing, and I feel similarly now. I can't see beyond the second 100 days, let alone 6 months, which is a little over 3 months. I because it is one of the most awful, and I guess you could say diabolically brilliant things about what's happened is the, um, the speed and comprehensiveness of what they've managed to do, because remember, they've been planning it for 8 years.
Yep.
So, they were ready to go. So, I think one thing that's important for us to do, first of all, is realize that this really isn't about Donald Trump at all. This is about what he's being allowed to do. So we need to assign blame where this is the fascist Republican Party who is rubber stamping all of this, and which has, I mean, the Republicans in Congress have ceded all of their constitutional responsibility. They've failed the American people on a daily basis. This is also down to the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court, which decided, in its infinite wisdom, to put Donald Trump beyond the reach of the rule of law. And now he is literally using what was a storied institution, as imperfect as it was, the Department of Justice, to attack his perceived political enemies and erode the rule of law even further. So, who do we need to focus on? Because I don't think it's Donald Trump anymore. How do we pivot? And what do we do knowing, okay, here we are. It's unimaginable to many people what happened in the first 100 days. It's unimaginable to many of us what's going to happen in the second 100 days. We have to assume that all of the degradation will continue, that
Mhm.
they will come up with new, creative, even more petty and cruel ways to
Yep.
attack people and erode our rights, civil and otherwise, to dismantle the Constitution, because of course they will, to do worse at the Department of Justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if we know that, let's let go of trying to imagine and just assume there is no worst. It will always get worse. If Donald
Mm.
Trump is involved, there is no bottom.
Mhm.
So let's plan accordingly. Does it really matter what the details are? No. What the goal is for the United States to be weakened, isolated, and no longer a functioning democracy. We don't want that to happen. So what do we need to do to prevent that? And you and I and many others have been, not enough, but some others anyway, have been talking about this, I think, since day one of the transition. Yes, we need protests. Yes, the protests need to be more frequent and they need to be bigger. Need to get to the point where they're constant. And I see that starting to happen. The protests are important in order to alert people the seriousness of what we're facing. However, ultimately, what's going to need to happen is that we are going to need to come together as a people and shut everything down.
Down. Yeah. My friend, Mary Trump, with the absolute next steps, the thing that I myself have been saying, If we do not have a national strike, if we do not shut this shit down, it will continue. And we can't even imagine what worse is in this moment. Thank you, my friend, for being my very first guest on As the World Churns. I appreciate you so, so very much.
Well, right back at you. And again, congratulations. I'm so excited for you. And I cannot wait to see what happens next. And I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you.